The Cubs made 3 trades at the trade deadline. I'm going to grade their efforts here in 2024. Cubs fans, Setup Nation, what's up? What's up? It's been a while since I've done a video podcast. I was in Hawaii for quite some time, so I apologize. And, well, I apologize for not being able to be consistent with content. I do not apologize for being in Hawaii for a while. It was a blast. Had a great time with my family. Had a great time watching. The Cubs did not do well in July. They haven't done well since April, so it made it easier to watch this team when you're in paradise. Just being completely honest. Hey, before we jump into grading the Cubs at the trade deadline, first of all, I want to make sure that you are subscribed, that you're commenting. The big thing I want to know from you during this episode is, what would you grade this trade deadline? You'll see my grade here in a second, but what would you grade this trade deadline from a scale, just like school, A all the way through F? And we did a video. I did a video about a week ago, and I promised that I would give away this bad boy, this Nico Hoerner signed baseball, to the person who had the best description in our comments and was also subscribed to our list of why the Cubs should either trade or not trade both Justin Steele and Nico Hoerner. And your winner is Sean Hendrickson. Sean, thank you for playing. You're going to have an email sent to you. Make sure you check your email. Make sure you check your spam just in case it heads there. And we're going to get you this Nico Hoerner signed baseball. And Nico did not go anywhere, unlike what I thought. So get to enjoy this while he's still on the Cubs. So let's get to grading the trade deadline here. And there's a number of trades that I want to go ahead and recap. But Jim Bowden, however you say his name, he gave the Cubs a B-. I'm giving the Cubs a C+. We're not too far off. The big difference here for me is that this was a seller's market, and Jed did not get enough done, if you ask me. So let's go ahead and break down these trades first of all. Number one, the very first trade was Nate Pearson. The Cubs got the former kind of top, or one of the top prospects as a starting pitcher from the Blue Jays, in Nate Pearson. He's not having a good season. In fact, he's not had a good major league career in just over 116 innings, has given up 23 home runs, and cannot figure out how to, it sounds like it's the fastball. I don't know enough quite yet, but sounds like he's going to be a project. Well, guess what? Julian Merryweather was also a project, and the Cubs didn't have to give so much up. Josh Rivera, and I don't want to butcher this name, but I'm going to, Yohendrick Pinango. Don't know much about either of them. I do know that based on other articles that I've seen, especially from guys like Greg Huss out there, it's not a big loss. So this is kind of a high reward, low risk type of trade. So I really like this one. Unfortunately, Nate Pearson, if you didn't see it, we have a breakdown of this. I'll go ahead and put it in the description. He did get tossed from his first game because he quote unquote threw at Tyler Stevenson. I don't believe he threw at him. I think that there's no reason why in your very first major league game with a new team that you're going to throw at a player. Not at all the intent there, but go watch that breakdown if you didn't already. Again, it's going to be in the description. The next trade, the big one, the one that got us all like, holy cow. Some of us teared up. Some of us screamed for joy. Some of us did a little bit of both. And that was Isaac Paredes and Christopher Morel. If you notice, I put a little bit of an accent on Paredes because my wife is teaching me how to do that. If you don't know, my wife speaks Spanish. She's actually a full-time interpreter for the courts here in California, and so she's really big on pronunciation. So Isaac Paredes, and a lot of you say, well, it's Isaac, isn't it? No, actually it's Isaac. That's the correct pronunciation for that name in Spanish. So first of all, the full details, Paredes and Morel were the big chips in that, but Hunter Biggie and Ty Johnson also go there to Tampa. And of course, the Cubs get Paredes, who actually was signed by the Cubs in the international pool back in 2015. Funny enough, with Morel, if you missed my video, I did the 13 facts that you need to know about Isaac Paredes. Make sure that's also in the description. Make sure to go check that out. All the things that you need to know about him and his background and what he brings over to the Cubs. Extremely interesting player. He's an all-star. He's had MVP votes. He is a proven major league hitter and defender. His outs above average in the same time span as Morel's is +7, where Morel's is -27. There's a ton to like about this trade, including the fact that Christopher Morel really didn't have a position with the Cubs. He's already now, of course, we all knew this was going to happen. Morel was going to go over to the Rays and he was going to light the world on fire. His first 2 games, he's already hit 2 home runs. Can we say we're shocked? I'm not. But also, like, does he hit 2 home runs with the Cubs these last 2 games the way that he was hitting? I don't think so. Like, there's something about Christopher Morel that he feeds off of energy, right? And he creates energy. There's not much energy going on with the Cubs right now. So was he just going to be bad this year and then turn it on next year for the Cubs? I don't know. The ceiling, the thing I don't like about this trade is that the ceiling to me is way higher for a Christopher Morel from an offensive standpoint, not defense, from an offensive standpoint, because he just has so much power, where Paredes, he really has that pull side power. And then he's kind of like, you even saw it in his first at bat with the Cubs last night. He kind of slapped a line drive to right field, kind of slapped a little mini line drive that got caught by Ellie De La Cruz. Like, he's not much of a power slug threat to all fields, but he can, when he's ahead in the count, really take advantage and pull some home runs to the left side. 69 out of the 69 home runs have all come to the pull side. So breaking down those two, again, go take a look at the video that I made with Paredes and all the things that you want to know about him. But, the things that we continue to like about this, as I'm looking at my notes, based on the current value, this looks like a steal. If you don't know anything about baseball trade values, go look them up on Twitter. They actually put a dollar value next to each player's name, and the Cubs, based on the dollar value that they had for Johnson, Biggie, and Morel, came out like looking like they robbed a bank kind of thing. So with that being said, though, making sure I hit on all the things I like. The things I don't like, Biggie, to me, has closer kind of stuff. 100-mile-an-hour fastball we saw in his very first outing as a Cub, just lighting up the radar gun. Looks like the secondary pitches need a little bit of work. Both location and spin rate seemed a little bit off. And that's just my eye test. That's not anything that I'm looking into Baseball Savant or anything like that on. I already mentioned that Morel's ceiling was obviously extremely high, and that's sad to see a player with that kind of potential leave. But I think the biggest disappointment in all of this is that Morel was just so likable, right? And we try to remove emotion from this, but it's hard to remove emotion from a guy that just gave you so many warm, fuzzy feelings. Rizzo was that kind of guy. D. Lee was that kind of guy. Sammy was that kind of guy. But Morel was, in such a short amount of time, really, you could call it 2 full seasons of games. He played in 3 seasons, but if you combine all the games together, it's really like 2 full seasons, and all the memories that he gave with the hugging of the catchers, the fist bumps of the umpires. I remember Laz Diaz would not give him a fist bump. That was a funny moment for me. Put down in the comments what was your favorite Morel moment, maybe either from his performance or from something like that. I remember him jumping into Wilson Contreras' arms, like a little kid. Those are the things that you're going to remember about Christopher Morel, and it's super sad. But I wish him the best of luck. I also, at the same time, am going to be just extremely disappointed if he turns into an all-star and Paredes starts to trend down. That would be extremely disappointing, but those are all the things that could happen. And let's just hope that Paredes, is a 30 home run guy year in, year out, and Morel's a 30 home run guy year in, year out, but Paredes brings the defense where Morel doesn't. Then we'll be looking at this and saying, hey, this actually worked out pretty well. How would you like to win a Cubs autographed piece of memorabilia? Steven won a Matt Shaw baseball, Everett won a Brennan Davis auto, and Matthew won a Luke Little ball. And we have so many more that we're giving away. Cade Horton, Mark Leiter Jr., Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks, and more. How can you win these? Easy. All you have to do is be signed up for the Setup Man emailing list. Every month of 2024, I'll be putting every single name on our list into a virtual hat and drawing the winner. Plus, every now and again, I'll do some giveaways on my live videos. All you have to do is go to setupman.net, scroll down to the bottom, and put in your name and email. That's it. Sign up for our list, and you'll give yourself a chance to be one of our lucky winners. The last trade that happened, Mark Leiter Jr. goes to the New York Yankees, and the Cubs get some really interesting and exciting prospects in return. And I don't know what it is about the Yankees, but this has worked out already for the Cubs. They sent Scott Efros to the Yankees back in, was that 22? And they got Hayden Wesneski in return. Now, Hayden came out, looking like a new ace for the Cubs, potentially. He's had his ups and downs through the organization the last couple of years, but still, Scott Efros has not pitched in a Major League Baseball game since 2022 and was a little bit older at the time. Same kind of deal here. Cubs trade age for youth. They send away a 33-year-old who, it's funny, I post on TikTok and Instagram and stuff, and people are like, Mark Leiter Jr. sucked. I'm like, you guys realize, like, he only had a 4-game bad stretch all this year. You take out those 4 games, he has a 2.45 ERA. Last year, he only had to, like, front all the load at the end of the year because everyone else was injured and he got fatigued. And for that reason, his ERA ballooned at the end of the year. The first 4.5 months of the year, he was amazing. So all of you who are like, Mark Leiter Jr. wasn't even that good. Why? Because he doesn't light up a radar gun. The dude gets outs. The dude gets lefties outs, especially. So prove to me that the numbers show you that Mark Leiter Jr. is not a good pitcher, and I'll listen. But based on the numbers, you take out a few bad games this year and the fatigue at the end of last year, and he's one of the most reliable relievers as a Cub. So, but age 33, and you get back to 24-year-olds, Jack Neely, who I'm extremely excited about, and Ben Cowles. So the things I like about this beyond the age is that Neely could be making his Major League debut ASAP. He's in AAA right now. He's made somewhere around 9 or 10 appearances, and he is sporting about a 3.38 ERA, if I remember correctly there. Now, in his entire minor league career, this is what's really exciting: 160 and a third innings pitched, 255 strikeouts. That is 95 more strikeouts than innings pitched. That's crazy. Those are seriously exciting numbers. He's got a fastball that goes between about 94 to 96, a cutter, and a slider. It sounds like, based on a few articles I've read, he's got closer kind of stuff, and that's what the Cubs need right now. So I would love to see him called up ASAP, see him kind of show what he's got here in 2024, and potentially be put into a high leverage situation in 2025. That would be really exciting. That would be a huge win out of this kind of trade, knowing that that was Mark Leiter's role here this year, but the inconsistency plus the age meant that he was kind of, not really going to be a plan for the years to come. Cowles I like because he's made huge strides in this last year of going from a power hitting kind of second baseman, shortstop, third baseman with a lot of strikeout to now actually more power, more slug, less strikeout. I did a video yesterday. Once again, I will post it down in the description below. I did a live video breaking down this trade of Neely and Cowles, and mentioned in the video that last year Cowles was right around a 27.5% strikeout rate at single A. Now he's a double A, only at 17.7% strikeout rate. That's an incredible improvement over 1 year and a promotion from single A to double A. So that's extremely exciting to me. He did break his hand and he's out for the rest of the season. So he's not going to be getting any sort of promotion or serious looks this year. But the other thing that I really like about this trade is that it gives the Cubs infield depth in their minor league system. And this reminds me a lot of the 2016 team when you had Addison Russell, you had Javi Baez, Ben Zobrist, Chris Bryant, all on the major league team. And you had Gleyber Torres in the minors. And what did Gleyber end up yielding? Aroldis Chapman, who eventually led the Cubs, nearly blew the Cubs promised land, but led the Cubs to the promised land essentially, and was a huge reason of why the Cubs were able to win the World Series. And Gleyber Torres at the time was a huge let go, but at the same time, like, he's turned out to be a pretty good player, but he's had his ups and downs as well. And I don't think any of us would redo that trade because it got us a World Series. So I like this because of that reason. The Cubs have Vasquez, they have Triantos, they have Shaw, they have Cowles now all in AA to AAA, along with Nico. Plus now you have Paredes over at third base. So there's a log jam, just like there's a log jam of outfielders prospects. There's a log jam of now infielder prospects as well as infielders at the major league level. And that means that I think all the things that were missed at this trade deadline could be used in the offseason now for Jed Hoyer and crew to go out and say, hey, we have this logjam. Let's go get some proven major leaguers and make 2025 the best that we can be. So my only thing about all this is that, again, the reason I give this a C plus is really the biggest surprises were the people that were not moved. And for that reason, I think Jed missed out on a really good seller's market. So the Cubs surprises, and this also goes into a little bit of the MLB surprises as well. To me, there was not a lot of big names that made you like go, whoa. In fact, let's just kind of start there. The major league surprises for me, aside from Flaherty, right? There was no starting pitcher that really like got traded that you were like, yeah, that's huge. Zach Eflin, maybe, but like Flaherty and Eflin were the only major starting pitchers that were dealt. Some of the other notable trades, we already mentioned Paredes, Eloy Jimenez, that was more of a salary dump. Tanner Scott, legit closer. Jazz Chisholm, who's already lighting the world on fire with the Yankees. Randy Arozarena. Those are some of the bigger ones, but even like the Jorge Soler trade, which was really cool, and you get to see him go back to the Braves where he won his World Series championship. Again, just kind of a salary dump because he's not really having that great of a year. There was one trade that I was just like, how did the Cardinals get away with this? The 3-team trade with the Cardinals, the Dodgers, and the White Sox. The Dodgers get Tommy Edman, which was the only guy the Cardinals gave up, and Michael Kopech and another reliever. Not sure who it is. Oliver Gonzalez might be a prospect. And the Cardinals get Eric Fedde, who's having a great season, and Tommy Pham, who's like, the all-star of getting picked up at the trade deadline and making an impact. I think in his first at bat, he had a grand slam. While the White Sox got Miguel Vargas and then a bunch of prospects. So literally the Cardinals, by involving the Dodgers and the White Sox, only had to give up Tommy Edman and got Eric Fedde and Tommy Pham. Like, what? How? Huh? Like, that's the kind of creative stuff I want to see Jed get in on. So all that to say, there were some surprises to me in the MLB that of guys that did not move, and even some of the trades that did happen. But the Cubs surprises to me were that Hector Neris and Drew Smyly are still Cubs. We really, truly, I expected Jed to unload 2 to 3 relievers at minimum, and instead he only unloaded 1. If you count Hunter Biggie, that's 2, but really Hunter Biggie, I think, was still in Iowa when it happened. So can't really count that as 2 major leaguers that are being shipped out. But you get rid of Mark Leiter Jr., you get rid of Hunter Biggie, you get Nate Pearson, and you get this guy, Jack Neely, who's potentially going to make his major league debut. But Hector Neris, like when the Cubs signed Hector Neris, you thought to yourself, okay, this is one of those like David Robertson type of signings that Jed has been really famous for in the last few years, Chris Martin type of signing, where it's like, if we're competing, great. This is a guy on the team that can help us get to the playoffs and maybe succeed in the playoffs. But if we're not competing, he's a great trade chip at the trade deadline. So we all just kind of assumed Neris, $9 million, 1-year contract with a club option, which by the way has a little twist on it that I'll mention here in a second, seemed like the perfect trade bait. And then Drew Smyly, who's having, I don't care what you have to say about Drew Smyly. In terms of numbers, he's having a really good season. And also a mutual option for 2025, buyout for $2.5 million. Didn't seem like a terrible contract, not the greatest contract, but the Cubs could have eaten probably a few $1 million of that and gotten something in return, and both of them are still Cubs. So I'll get into my thoughts on Jed on that in a second, but some of the hangups to me might have been Smyly. We already mentioned $2.5 million buyout, along with, still owed, I think it was $10 million this year. So you're looking at probably about 40% of that was going to have to be paid by the next team, or the Cubs were going to have to eat that. And Neris, the 2025 option converts to a player option when he appears in 60 games or more in 2024. He's already at 40 games. To think that he would not appear in 20 games in the next 50 plus, I think that's going to happen. So that turns into a player option. Some other caveats on that. If he finished 45 games in 2024, then he would get that. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know how many he's finished, but it doesn't feel like it's been that many. If he was on the IL on the final game, then he does not get that player option. And player does not have a long-term injury in any part of the season. So all those things probably work in the favor of Neris getting that player option, which would be $9 million next year. And based on the year that he's having, he's not worth $9 million. Based on the year he had last year, he's worth $9 million, but not the year he's having this year at 3.58 ERA. Now, the other surprise to me was that Nico or Tyone did not get traded. Nico Horner and Jameson Tyone. Tyone was at the peak of his value. And a lot of you are like, oh, if we throw away Tyone, like we're just throwing away the season. Guys, like the season has been thrown away for at least a month now. Yeah, you could say, well, look at the Diamondbacks, look what they did. Yeah, but look at their bullpen. Like that bullpen from the 7th inning on led them to the World Series, essentially. It was crazy that with really only 2.5 starters, they made it that far, which does show you that anything can happen. But I just don't think the Cubs are equipped for that. And the cool thing about it to me too is that like the starting pitching has been so good this year for the Cubs. Losing Tyone didn't feel like it was going to be a huge disappointment, honestly. So him staying at the peak of his value in a seller's market where starting pitching was needed just seemed like a really big letdown. And Nico, again, like you see the Cows trade, you see all this logjam of essentially middle infielders coming up through the Cubs system that I've already mentioned. And it felt to me like Nico was a guy that was probably movable. Did I want to see him go? No, I didn't want to see him go. I love Nico, but seemed like a missed opportunity there as well. Maybe teams didn't want him as much as we thought they would because he's having a down season, but he had pretty much the highest WAR, depending on which site you look at, Baseball Reference or Fangraphs. He had one of the highest WARs on the team in the last 2 years. Gold Glover. He's probably going to be an all-star at some point here in his career. It just seemed like that was potentially a missed opportunity to be able to get, a big prospect or maybe a big reliever in return that could help with team control for the next few years. And the thing that I think is frustrating about this is that, Hoyer gets on marquee later in the day at the end of the trade deadline and just basically kind of does what he usually does. And to quote him, he said there was, lots of opportunities, there was lots of talks, but for whatever reason, they just didn't happen. And I just think about this, and the first thing that comes to mind for me is the 2022 trade deadline of Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ staying on the team when it was very obvious that both of them should have been moved, especially Wilson Contreras, because they were both all-stars that year. They were both at the peak of their careers. And Wilson was in a walk year. Happ had a couple more years or 1 year more at least of control. But to get nothing for those guys, you worry about it. Now, Nico and Tyone and some of these guys are probably going to have more years available. So there's still a chance to trade them in the offseason or next year. But it's the things that Jed doesn't do that, to me, frustrates me as a fan the most than the things that he does do, right? You could look at the Michael Busch trade or the Christopher Morel trade here in the next 2 years and see Morel and, Jackson Ferris and Zaire Hope all lighting the world on fire and be mad then. But right now, I like that he got those deals done. It's the deals that he hasn't gotten done. And I kind of, we don't want to continue to do this, but we kind of have to because he is Theo's predecessor. And for that reason, like I look at Theo and I look at Jed and I just see there's a lack of movement when it comes to Jed. Theo, here's some of the deals that he got done, not just at the trade deadline, but overall. Jose Quintana, say what you want about that trade. Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease, that was a huge miss it'd be great to have Dylan Cease in the Cubs organization right now, but he got that deal done in a time that the Cubs needed another starting pitcher. Aroldis Chapman, don't think we would redo that one. Anthony Rizzo, that was a huge trade. How about the Jake Arrieta and Pedro Strop deal, right? Like, even at that time, I don't even think he knew what he was getting in return, but we got him for basically peanuts. Kyle Hendricks, Addison Russell for Jeff Samardzija. These were huge, impactful trades that helped the Cubs win a championship outside of Quintana, who came after the championship. These were major, impactful trades. Jed, on the other hand, okay, Javi for PCA, that was a big one. That was a really great trade. Even if you have just the Javi today and the PCA today that they are, Cubs win that trade. Dave Robertson for Ben Brown, immediate win right there. Scott Efros for Hayden Wesneski, that's a win. Some of the duds, really the one that comes to mind, Chris Bryant, all right? Caleb Killian had a lot of promise. Alexander Canario had a lot of promise, just has not panned out. Killian still has a little bit of time left, I think, but Canario, it just seems like the organization is not very high on him. The unknowns, Darvish for Casey, Yu Darvish for Owen Casey, Anthony Rizzo for Kevin Alcantara. Those are the things that we still don't know, but it's these missed opportunities that I really feel like, and think about all the opportunities that we don't even know about. Maybe the bad trades that he's turned down, let's give him some credit too. Some of the bad trades, I'm guessing that, people were calling about Nico and Tyone and Neris and Smiley and maybe some other guys. And he's like, no, that's just not enough. I commend him for not giving in and not taking the bad deals just to, as he mentioned, quote unquote, accumulate assets. But there had to be something out there, right? Like, and I'm not going to doubt that the dude doesn't work hard, but there had to be something out there. So like, who's not carrying the weight here? Who's not saying the right things? Who's not doing enough on their end to make some of these deals happen? Is it Carter? Is it Jed? Is it other people? I don't know the answers to that, but I do know that I'm surprised that the Cubs only gave away one reliever and only really got one major exciting player out of all this. Jack Neely is also exciting, but really right now in terms of proven, I'm surprised that that's all that they've got. So let me know what your thoughts are. Again, all the videos that I mentioned, all the episodes I mentioned are down in the description. That's going to do it for me right now here on the Setup Man podcast. So I'm going to go put my arm on ice. We'll talk to you later, Setup Nation.